The French Revolution is a direct result of Enlightenment thinking, the American Revolution in frustration with the nobility and clergy of France. First, Enlightenment ideas of the 17th and 18th centuries developed ideas of natural rights of citizens. Note, at this point in history, the definition of citizen is very limited and often did not include people based on gender or race. However, the idea that citizens had rights with which they were born was a new concept. Citizens often had to live under the whims of their feudal lords and were restricted in influence. Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire both advocated for different forms of natural rights of citizens. Rousseau believed in the idea of a social contract in which government should be freely formed by the citizens, but people agreed to give up some of their freedoms in order to have a good society. An example of this would be that you can vote for representatives when you are 18 years old, and these representatives impose laws that restrict you and others on things like speeding, theft, and taxation. On the other hand, Voltaire also believed in the freedom of people to express their thoughts and religion. However, he believed that most people were generally idiots, and so monarchs should have absolute rule, but look out for the rights of their citizens and not just themselves. These are conflicting ideas that would help lead to the turmoil of the French Revolution. The last example that helped lead to the French Revolution was the American Revolution. The American Revolution was a direct result of people fighting for their rights against an absolute monarchy. The French citizens felt a close attachment to these ideas, as they themselves helped the American colonists win their independence from Britain. During the 18th century, France saw a rise in living standards for its people. More people were able to move to urban areas as craftsmen, as agricultural improvements were made. Furthermore, the extension of the French Empire into the Americas and trade around the world brought much wealth for merchants who could then pay to educate their children. This led to a rising class of bourgeoisie made up of doctors, lawyers, and teachers. This rising class further opposed ideas of feudalism, in which serfs worked for their lord and were oftentimes tied to and restricted to the land given to them by their lord. The rising standards of the bourgeoisie led to discontent, as this class wanted more say in the government and policies of the nation. France was divided into three estates. The first estate was made of the Roman Catholic clergy, which encompasses less than 1% of the population. The second estate was made up of the nobility and royalty, which made up about 2% of the population. This top 3% of the population controlled all the power within France. The third estate was made up of everyone else and included the bourgeois, the urban class craftsmen, and peasant farmers. These pictures show the Palace of Versailles. Take a moment to grasp the extravagance of the building and grounds as an example of the money that the nobility of France spent on the royalty. The bourgeoisie quickly became frustrated with this, among other problems. France faced many economic problems in the 18th century. Although France had made improvements in agriculture, it still had to feed a growing population, and famines in the 1780s would lead to spikes in bread prices, leading to the starvation of many French peasants. Compare this with the high cost of living of the French nobility, and the bourgeoisie had a reason to rally the support of the people behind them. Furthermore, France raised taxes in the late 18th century due to rising debts, one of which was from the American Revolution that had cost France much money. The royalty's support for the rights of people in the American Revolution would lead to its own citizens rebelling against them. In response to the difficulties, King Louis XVI tried to raise taxes on the other nobility. This did not go over well and forced a convention of the Estates General. During this meeting, the Third Estate submitted its grievances against the other two estates, which would lead to the beginning of the Revolution. In June of 1789, the Third Estate voted to create a National Assembly that would provide them with more of a say in the French government. Then on June 20th, the representatives of the Third Estate swore an oath on their meeting place, a tennis court, to draw up a new constitution. On July 14th, 1789, Parisian citizens stormed the Bastille in Paris. The Bastille was a prison that also held some weaponry. This storming was more symbolic than a tactical move, since the Bastille did not have any prestigious prisoners at the time and little weaponry. However, the day is seen as the July 4th of France. Then on August 27, 1789, the National Assembly adopted the Declaration for the Rights of Man to advocate for the natural rights given to each citizen of France.